wrote a little bit here. If you don't know if you've known anybody who are Epirotes in this community, we're from Epiros, okay? Not us specifically, but our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors. We're from Cleveland. Anyway, so I just made a map so you know where Epiros is, because some people, will ask me, which island is that? And no, it's not an island. It's part of the mainland. And there's a reason I marked Albania here. Okay, that red spot is Albania. All right, Epiros is right along the Ionian coast. If you've ever gone to Corfu and you didn't fly in, you took a boat, you go to Ilumenica, which is this little town in Epiros on the shore there, and you go to Corfu. The capital is Ioannina. So it's basically this whole area here. And the reason I'm doing this is because you will learn that Epiros, in the northern part of Greece, on the Ionian Sea, there's much history, which I'll skip over and jump to 1913, when the entire Epiros district was a province of Greece. During the conference of 1913, after the Balkan Wars, and this is after, Epiros was one of the last areas liberated from the Turks. And we were liberated, but there's a place called Byzantium, I think, and I've been there. It's in Epiros, and it's the last stand of the Greeks against the Turks at that point. So they were, so in 1913, the powers that be at the time, and after the Balkan War, the new state of Albania was created. And that little blob you see there is part of Albania. And an arbitrary line was proposed to delineate where the border of Greece ended and Albania began. The line divided North Epiros from the rest of Epiros. Okay, so it was definitely sliced in half or whatever, and this part belonged to Albania and this part. Now, meanwhile, it's totally inhabited by Greeks. Okay. The line divided North Epiros from the rest of Epiros. The north was given to Albania against the interests of Greece and the wishes of the Epirotes themselves. They always considered themselves Greeks. In the ensuing decades, Albania had many types of government structures. Okay, they kept changing, and and people at that point, let's say the decades after 1913, were able to come and go. And Anne's family is from North Epiros, and my family was from regular Epiros, the Greek part of it. And so, but they all considered themselves Greeks. And during that part of history, they were able to come and go because her parents came from that area, and they came to the United States, and they didn't?
Oh, yeah, they did.
Oh, they
but
did?
My parents had to escape. My mother's family had to
escape. Okay, so.
Because by then, that part of Albania was communist.
Well, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But during, like your dad, for example,
Yeah,
I think he was able to come.
Yeah.
When the war started, of course, the Nazis took over, okay? And again, then nobody could go anywhere. So the Greeks were, the people from North Epiros were, part of the Nazi regime at that point. And then when the Russians came in at the end of the war to liberate Greece and Albania, the Russians kind of took over. And again, Albania then became a communist state. And it was the most oppressive, it became the most oppressive communist state in the whole world. They were the worst. And the Greek people of North Epiros were totally closed off in this atheistic country. And all there were Muslims there were Catholics there were Greek Orthodox there, and it turned, none of that was allowed to be practiced. And that, I guess your mother then came at the end of the war, and so she had to escape to get here. So
With her mother and brothers.
With her
Over
mother
the
and
mountains.
brothers, yeah.
Like the Van Trapp family.
It was like the Van Trapp family, yes. They sang all the way
They
across.
escaped over to
We can make a
Corfu.
musical out of
They
it.
did, they went to Corfu, yeah.
I have friends whose family escaped that way.
That's
Yeah.
escaped that way. So anyway, so when they got to the United States, okay, the Epirotes, all of them, wanted North Epiros to become reunited with regular Epiros. And so they developed a federation. And Anne happened to have this book, and I'm sure my father had it somewhere, but I couldn't come up with it, but Anne certainly did have it. And it was called the Pan-Epirotic Federation of America. And the Pan-Epirotic Federation of America is an organization, this was written in 1959 when we had the convention here in Cleveland. And somebody wrote this out. It was established at Boston, Massachusetts in 1917. Since then, it has carried on uninterrupted publicity in the American press, and it has submitted numerous reports to our government in Washington of the cruel treatment by the various Albanian governments of the Greek minority, of 250,000 Greeks at the time, under Albanian rule, especially under the present Red Rule. In addition, the League has remitted thousands of dollars for the relief of Greek refugees in Greece fleeing from the Red Albanian state. Twice, thanks to the campaign of enlightenment by the League, the Senate of the United States has adopted resolutions voicing the sentiment of the United States Senate that the province known as North Epiros, where the Greeks are predominant under Albanian rule, should be reunited with the mother country, Greece. And the main group of Epirotes were first in Boston. New York had a great number of Epirotes. Chicago had a lot, and Cleveland area had some, but not as many as those other areas. But they still had a very active league like this, you know, and they had this chapter in Cleveland was founded in 1926. Our grandfathers became members as they arrived in Cleveland. Our chapter was called the Epirotic Society of Dodona. And this is a side note here. Dodona in Epiros was the oldest Hellenic oracle, dated to 2000 BC. Homer described Dodona as an oracle of Zeus. It was second only to the Oracle of Delphi in prestige, and there's an ancient theater there, which I have visited and taken a picture of. So that's why they picked that name for our chapter here in Cleveland, which I thought was kind of nice. Okay, we grew up going to monthly meetings and social events, and these conventions happened every couple of years, and they would have some person from the government, a senator or inviting a congressperson, that were trying to do, of course, you couldn't do anything about the communists of Albania, but they kept trying. But it was also a very social group, and we of course grew up together going to all these events. Eventually, by about in the 80s, Albania changed, and it opened, when the communists were kind of falling apart, they changed, and people were able to leave and visit. And Anne's mother had an opportunity at one point, is it the 80s?
Yeah.
In the 80s, to go visit Albania and finally see her village or whatever, and she became ill at the time.
But her brothers went.
But her brothers went, and Anne has some nice pictures that I guess the brothers took of your father's village. And so anyway, that was nice. It was too bad your mom didn't get to go, but she wasn't able to at the time. So eventually that's what happened. So everything that our poor federation did really, amounted to not much. But it finally opened up. Now, the other thing that I heard from my cousins in Epiros, when it opened up, all hell broke loose. People were running into all the villages of the regular Epiros. And these people, who were probably in our age group because they're post-war, they grew up with no religion. They had it seems like they had no moral standards as far as what stealing, and the Greeks were all complaining that they're just marauders coming in and just taking things, and it wasn't a pleasant thing, and they were not happy. Well, eventually I assume those people just spread out and just went elsewhere. But that was a period of time when I know my cousins were complaining about that in Greece. So anyway, all right, so by the 1970s here in our city, when our parents' generation was getting old, the younger generation did not pick up the ball and take over, and that would be us, basically. There weren't really enough of us. There's a lot of Samians, there's a lot of Hyotes, there's a lot of, Cretan people, and there just weren't that many of us here in Cleveland from Epiros. But we do have a proud heritage, and we like to, you know, we know how important it was. And I know, so in other words, the treasury, the little teeny treasury that we had left, that was just a, you know, little teeny, small amount of money, nothing great. I know Ann's mother particularly wanted to use, say, the two people that were left in charge of that fund never wanted to do anything with it, including not investing it. They just let it sit in the savings account, so it did absolutely nothing. And I remember saying, think of something, what are we gonna do with this money? I mean, something's gotta be done, we're not using it, it's just sitting there. So for about 40 years, it's been sitting there. And I became a signatory a couple of years ago because one person became very ill and he recently died. But anyway, and so I was talking to Ann, who was one of the ones that's left. I don't know if you know Zisiatis. Yeah, he's another one. My uncle and aunt, the elder statesman of the group, you know, and that's about it. You know, that's the only people that I really, from the past, had a vested interest in this money. And so we talked about it. And it's not a lot, it's a little bit of money. And we thought of, you know, dividing it up, giving it to the local host groups. But one thing that we wanted to do, we wanted our name to remain. We didn't want us, that the Epirotic existed in Cleveland as part of Cleveland Hellenic history, and we did not want to lose that. So we said, now where's the best place to, if we divide it up, yes, we've done some, a little bit of good here, a little bit of good there, but then we're gone. So by, a good place to keep the name safe would be with the Hellenic Preservation Society, because then any program that would come along, who are some donors? Oh, there's our name, Epirotic Society, the donors, you know. And I think that would be a way to keep our name alive. And if there was a particular project that what money I'm gonna give right now is appropriate to sponsor, maybe we could just be part of, you know, we could be that project, the name on that project, so that would be a good idea. But it doesn't matter, it's coming to the Treasury, the board can do with it as they wish, and it's not a lot, don't get crazy, it's not a lot of money. But it's an odd little amount of money, because, wait a minute, what do we have left in our account? We have $9,705.45.
That's amazing.
So,
That is so
we thought,
beautiful.
that's a nice amount of money, it's not bad, but, you know, so.
It's not so small.
It
It's
is
not so small, really.
And what
But
an
anyway,
amazing
it is
story.
written out here to the Hellenic Preservation Society of Northeastern Ohio. So this way, all we ask is that you just keep our name alive somehow, you know, wherever it's written or whatever, just include it, because we are part of Cleveland history.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything else to say?
So,
Yeah.
so, accepting for treasurer Eric Griffin.
Oh, that's right.
Will be.
Who's gonna accept it?
Paula will accept.
Okay, here's your check. Okay. Anyway, I'm so happy, I think,
Amendment, this
Do you
has
want
to
me
be
to
a
take and
photo.
deposit it? You want me to take it and deposit it?
Oh,
I could do
can
it.
you?
Yeah.
Oh,